Okay, ship handlers, week, this is week 8, day 2. And here we go. We're talking about tugboats. And as you can see, we are getting into making up a tug, and we'll talk about zdrive tugs, in other words, ASD, and what that stands for. Cycloidal drive tugboats, twin screw and single screw. We'll go through those risk factors. But this is all about ship handling with tugs, or we could use the word ship assist. Risk factors, as I said, to personnel when you're assisting vessels, something called a trip tug. And docking, we'll go through some different kind of interesting docking scenarios, things that I've been certainly learned about from others and things that I've experienced myself and have seen. So we'll kind of alert you to those. Tug operations and deck seamanship when we're working with tugs, or on the ship. We're going to also get into, at the end, estimating and reporting distances, and then we're going to break a little bit of a change up, and we'll be talking about special propellers and rudders. This could all take, let's see, week 8 on Wednesday online, and we'll cover this on Monday, and we might even get into next Wednesday online as well. So this is kind of a long topic area. And by the way, I was down on the tug today. I was with the crew down there and seeing what was happening, and stepped aboard the Susan Clark as well. And looks like things are starting to move, and so that's pretty good. 4 weeks ago, so I hope you get 4 weeks on the bigger boats, and that'll be pretty good for you. 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I guess, I had a chance to be out in Seattle, and I had a chance to be a guest of Foss Maritime, and particularly on Foss Tugs. And this was one of the tugboats I rode down from Seattle to Tacoma, and we spent the day and a half on board. And we're down in the Tacoma area, and I learned a lot about cycloidal tugs, which I will pass on to you. Here's another picture that I want to kind of think about. This says, and it says conventional tug up here. And I'm going to ask that you tell me what you can tell, or what you can know, what you can see about this tug. So you may need to go into the PowerPoint, find this, drill down to this particular slide, and tell me what you can see about this tug. Is it shrouded? Is it not shrouded? What can you tell about the style of the propeller? Is it inboard turning? Is it outboard turning? Can you tell? So look this over. And maybe you can you can see the name of the tug. Maybe you can do a little research on that, and that might be interesting. And maybe you could share that in the back and forth in the discussions. Let's see if I can start a discussion on that. So just be thinking about this particular type. This is a Z-drive tug. You can see that it's Z-drive. You can see the omnidirectional aspect of it. It's in a floating dry dock, and it's that floating dry dock. It looks to me like it's someplace in New York, since that's what it says right there up on you see that? The little details make sense. I'll tell you something else about this dry dock as I'm looking at it. See these pillars and see these lines that come down from the side? Those are how the crew of the dry dock, how they are able to, when the ship comes in, how this vessel comes in, they can crank on these, and these are kind of like a chain fall hoist, but instead of being a hoist, it actually moves the dock blocks which go under the ship, so the vessel arrives in place, and they're able to slide these dock blocks, and so they get into place under the ship nicely. Kind of interesting, hard to explain, but maybe you can visualize that. So these are Z-drive tugs. You can see they're omnidirectional. This tug, you see, this tug right now, the prop wash would be going up under the ship. And this one, this propeller rather, and this one, they would be shooting off in a direction about maybe a point or 2 points abaft the starboard beam. So it's squirting out this way. We can see the nozzles, and this one is just coming all the way around. I think it's a Moran tug. Here's another tug. This is called a cycloidal tug, and Maybe you've heard about these. We've got some pretty good videos that I'm going to post up for you, and you can look at those, and we'll talk about how those work. The foss tug that I was on, that I showed you the first picture of, that was a cycloidal tug. Well, let's look at just, how we make up ships, and tugboats for ship assist. And let's focus on the red tug back here. A prudent captain of a ship would say, okay, what's the story with this tug? Is it single screw? Is it twin screw? Is it twin screw shrouded propellers? Are they Z-drive, or is it not anything like that? Is it cycloidal? So we've just listed off like 4 or 5 different possibilities. And then you want to say, as the skipper of the ship, you want to say, well, how big is this tug? Is this a 2,000, 1,000? Is it 4,000 horsepower? How many horsepower is this tug? Because that's going to be an indication, of course, as you know, of the bollard pull. And let's go a little bit more with this one, and let's start thinking about this particular scenario here where it says the stern line is used to control the tug's transverse thrust. Now, I don't think you have enough experience to understand fully what I just said, so let me explain. If you were an experienced person and you saw that, you would probably suspect, I hope you would suspect, that because you've got a stern line up there, because you've got that quarter line sometimes, as it's called, it probably means that you're a single screw tug, or at least you're concerned about being able to hold your right angle to the ship. See, this is the bow of the tug, this is the stern. That line connects up here to the ship. It comes down. I'm not showing it, but it would go probably around a fair lead, and it might go to the winch, or it might have its own winch. And what you could do is lengthen or shorten this line here, and by lengthening it or shortening it, you could change the angle of the tug as you were pushing or pulling. That's not always easy to do just with the rudder, because that changes stuff. So if I were to heave on this line and shorten it up, you can see that the tug would go over to a slightly different position. For instance, if I heaved on that line, you see I could bring the tugboat stern over to the starboard, and I could angle it like this. Now, that would be a way of shaping up the tug to push or pull as you wanted it. On the other hand, if I were to lengthen that quarter line on the tug, if I were to lengthen it, the stern line, if I were to lengthen it like I've shown here, that would allow the stern to maybe warp over and get more to the port. But what if this was a single screw tug? And if it was started to back, this would only happen when you were backing, but it would only happen when you were backing. Because the transverse thrust would start to want to walk the stern off to port. Even though the bow was tied up, it was made secure. And whether or not it was one line or if it was 2 lines, let's pick it down to 1 line. And now we can control it. I've got 1 line out on the bow. It doesn't really matter. But as I can do the same control, but this is a single screw tug. So when you're backing, when that tug's trying to back down and pull that stern of this ship to a southerly direction, let's say, that tug wants to keep working itself around. If that stern line wasn't there, it would keep coming around and around, and it would go a little bit further. It would keep backing to port. It would come around a little bit more. It would keep backing to port. It's really out of position now. Ultimately, so far out of position, it really wasn't have anything, and if it continued to back, it was just pulling the tug. The tug was just backing. It was pulling the stern of the ship this way. That's not at all what was intended. We wanted it to be, and just excuse me, I'll just do this quickly. We wanted it to be in this position here. And so what we do is we put out a line, we put out a quarter line. So we get the tug in position, we start to send out this line here. Let's see if I can do this. We put this line out, connect it up, make it fast, tighten it up. I can control it. I'm on the winch, and I can hold this position. Generally, at right angles. You want that tug to be at right angles. You're going to get the most effect when you're pushing and the most effect when you're going astern. So that's a quarter line or a stern line. Now the next thing I want to talk about is just to be able to, we want to give these lines, and you see the tug is made up with a with the lines, got 3 lines made up to the ship. Now this is referred to, and they're called the backing line. You'll see the come ahead line, and you see the stern line. Now, just to see you clear, these are the smokestacks. This is the bow of the tug, and this is the stern of tug. This particular tug is made up what is called on the hip. This tug is made up to the ship. It's putting the ship on the hip. Where? The hip of the tug. This area, and it's made up like this. And I suppose it's like when a person carries a child, you carry the little baby, you put it on your hip. That term, on the hip, well, you can see what I was talking about there. I threw that picture in. So, but this is something where we talk about that, where it is, the tug is being towed on the hip. So that's, but the tie-up itself is called a power tie-up. So this is the stern line. Just memorize these, so I'll ask you for them on the test. So there's the stern line, as I said, and if we go here, and we'll go back here, there's the come ahead line. Now, if we were tying the tug up to the berth, to the dock, at the pier, at the wharf, we would probably call that the spring line. This still would be the stern line, but we would call that the spring line. But in the towing operation, this is called, or it could be called the come ahead line. As I said, you might have heard that in different terms, but it's the come ahead line, and that's the one I'd like you to know. And this one, a little bit different also, the backing line. This is the backing line here, because when you back the tug, this is the line that's going to take the tension, that's going to do the work. So just kind of remember those. Those are going to be on the test. I'll ask you about backing, come ahead, and stern lines, and I'll show this to you. Okay? You see this a lot, particularly in European ports, and this is a little different. Just a regular twin screw tugboat or a single screw tug, and being used just on a line. It's very different than what we see in the United States, where we see a lot of tugboats come up and just push with their hull, hull to hull, the bow or the stern of the tugboat pushing on the ship. But what we see here, one of the safety concerns that we would talk about with a tugboat is that when a tug is tipped over by the force of that ship moving ahead, you see that there is there's an arrow here indicating. Now this really isn't considered a problem for tractor tugs, but it's detrimental to fixed propeller tugs or even a twin screw, but a twin screw, even though it's got shrouds, but it's fixed. It's not azimuthing drive, it's not a Z-drive, it's not a cycloidal drive, it's not a tractor tug, so it's just more of a traditional tug. There's a risk there that the ship, by moving, could flip the tug over. And I'll show you a picture of what happens when that occurs. It's a little frightening, and you'll see it happening here, and it'll be memorable, and I'll show you that video in just a moment. So remember that word tripping, when a tug gets flipped over. This isn't the one I wanted to show you. I'm not quite there yet. This is intentional. This is called going into the indirect mode. This ship, it's a tractor tug. It's omnidirectional, and I can tell you that it's a Z-drive. It's a Z-drive tug. It's a tractor tug. It's omnidirectional. It's meant to do this, and we'll explain what's going on when we see this done. This is called ship assist, not ship docking, but ship assist. And for instance, when ships come into a place like Puget Sound, they all have an escort tug. This is an escort tug doing ship assist. It's helping to turn or can do emergency stops. And this is actually something that's come after the Exxon Valdez and the Oil Pollution Act of 1990. It really goes back to that point right there. Here's another picture of a Z-drive tug in the indirect mode. This really isn't it looks kind of scary. It looks like it might get tripped, but this is not what's happening here. This is intentional. So what you're going to see here in this imagery, you're going to see a tugboat. It's being followed by a barge. Something happens. There's a strong current, but the barge overtakes the tug, and it causes the tug to be tripped. It's a barge on a towing hawser. Let's see if we can get this to play here. So we see the ship, we see the tugboat, we see the barge, and it's coming around that corner. Now you see the barge overtaking the ship. Now that happened so quick. Look, this person climbed out over the side. He got off the tug. Now that is a shrouded, but the engines are still running. It's shrouded propellers, completely tripped. The barge has now overtaken the tug. We're going to lose sight of the tug. The engines are still turning there. You're going to see a lot of smoke come up from that tugboat in just in a minute. So extraordinary that somebody was there to take this picture. Now you can, if you were to find this, and I can share you might be able to hear someone talking in the background. That was the narration of the guys who were taking this.
Be careful.
We got to keep. I'm sorry for the print over the top of this, but we see somebody coming. There's somebody on the barge. He's already got up on the barge, or already was. Here comes the guy to the rescue on the little kayak. He's going to go around underneath, and you'll see him when he comes out the other side. It's pretty amazing. Here comes another fishing boat. Right. So he's rescuing somebody in the water now. He's picking him up, giving him a little bit of relief. You can see the person in the water. You can see the tugboat in the background. I shouldn't laugh. You can see. Look at this guy. There's a guy on the back of the tug. I mean, that's just nobody died as far as I know in this particular situation. But notice how quickly it happened. Anyway, I'll share the link on this so that you can see it as yourself. It's in the PowerPoint. So that's the first link up here that we just watched. The other one here is going to the indirect mode, so we'll watch that as well. We'll just take a couple of minutes to see what that's all about. So there's two things. One is what could go wrong with just a conventional tug, like you just saw. And then this is what's happening in a situation where it's intentional, with it not that they're being tripped, but they're in that indirect mode. So what we're looking at here is a tug going in the indirect mode. Notice it is the contact point for the line is up at the bow. That's intentional. Notice the deck is awash. And that is dramatic. It is really awash. It is intentional. That is a tractor tug. Look at that. Look at that. Look how that is buried. That is intentional. It is applying a tremendous amount of tension onto that towing hawser. This. Smith Clyde is the name of the tug. You know, there's a watertight door right there. Did you notice that was really closed? It was absolutely closed. Nobody would leave a watertight door open to the water when you're in this mode. Why are they doing this? They're doing this so they can get a tremendous amount of force on that line to pull that stern of that ship around. Do it intentionally. Maybe it's for braking. Maybe it's When I say breaking, I don't want it to be broken. I want it to be stopped, a breaking effect. That's pretty dramatic, though. Oh, it's a Canadian boat. Sure, there you go. Here's another view of another vessel going in the indirect mode, taken from, not from the ship, but from the other side. And so we can see, we see that line coming down, attaching to the bow. Now this is a Z-drive boat. And I'll explain further on how you can know it's a Z-drive boat. So there are two types of tractor tugs. This is a tractor VSP, or you could have an ASD, Voth Schneider Propulsion, or Voth Schneider Propeller. You could say either one, but a tractor is a VSP. It's also, the other one is a tractor with an azimuthing stern drive. Everybody got that? I'm going to write that down a couple of times so that you'll see it. This is the VSP drive right here. Notice that the VSP is at the bow of the vessel. It's at the bow of the tug. These could be equal horsepower, but they are completely two different types of vessels. As it was said to me by a foss captain a number of years ago, where the line connects to the tug will tell you a lot about what's going on underwater. And what I mean by that is the propulsion unit is the propeller. It's a much different propeller, but there's the propulsion unit up in the bow. Then the connection point is going to be back here on the stern. This is the business end of a VSP tug. If we've got the power back here and the propeller back here, more conventional, this is a Z drive, that's another word for it, then the business end would be up here. You know, that would be at the bow of the ship. So you'll see the winch back here, and you'll see the connection point. As we look at more videos, you'll see that. As you look at more videos, you'll see it here as well. You'll see how this all comes together. Just got a whole bunch of variety of different configurations here that I just threw together. Let's see, here's a Z-drive tug. It's got 3 Z-drives. One of those actually might be at the bow. These are both at the stern, outboard, but this one might be a little far forward. Here is a VSP unit. Let's see, here's Z-drive, but it's mounted forward. That's a little bit different. This is Z-drive. This is VSP. And let's see, this is a Z-drive mounted forward as well. When I say Z-drive, it could be an azimuthing stern drive. This would be azimuthing stern drive. This is a azimuthing propeller, so we can't say it's at the stern. So these are real subtle things. This could be a tractor tug. This could be the ASD. This could be the Voth Schneider propeller. So there's a lot of different terminology, and they're hard to keep track of, but as you get more familiar with them, you'll certainly learn those. So we'll finish up with a couple of pictures of the Pentagoet, and you're starting to go out on the Pentagoet and the Clark, as I think I maybe mentioned earlier, and I think you're gonna enjoy that a lot, and particularly the expertise of Captain Leach on board on the Pentagoet, and if you have them for lab, I think that's going to be real good. But the whole crew down there is really quite up to speed on all this stuff. All right, so let's see. It's going to be the end of the day, so you've got this. I'm going to tag something on in addition about pilots, and that's going to follow up right here, but it's about 5 minutes long. So watch that. That's going to clarify some stuff about pilots and that whole topic of enrolled ships and registered ships, and the question of federal pilots and state pilots. So I just want to go a little bit further with that, and I've just kind of pasted that on the end of this video as well. That's going to make the whole thing around 30 minutes long, so enjoy it, and I'm working on scoring those quizzes. I know some of you are still working at taking them, but as you probably get to the end of this by the time you see this and view this lecture, you'll probably be all set for that. So I'll see you in Monday's class, and good. Take care. Have a good weekend. Talk to you later.